Today's webinar is about improving OEE to free up time for TPM activities, Part 1. Presenting the session today is Ross Kennedy. Ross is the President and Founder of CTPM, a team of business improvement coaches. He is recognised as Australasia's leading authority on total productive maintenance and CTPM's Australasian TPM lean approach to operational excellence. So let's get started with today's session, and I'll now pass you over to Ross.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Topic being improving OEE to free up time for TPM activities. And you'll notice it's got the part 1 to it. I've got to, apologise a little bit. We started putting this together, and as I was finalising it last night, I realised I had far too much material in it to cover everything I really wanted to cover. So I thought what we'll do is we'll split it into 2, and when we have our next webinar, half-hour free webinar in December on the 10th of Tuesday the 10th, we will do the second part, which will be, but today what we will cover is what affects the OEE losses, capturing OEE loss analysis data, and who affects the OEE losses, getting started using a cross-functional team, conducting analysis to support OEE improvement, and then the summary at the end, just including the importance of taking a holistic approach to understanding all losses. The actual OEE loss analysis using our OEE special spreadsheet will be the part 2. So I'll cover that as we get further into it. But again, just looking at the bigger picture, we have a model called the 10 integrated ingredients of Australasian TPM, and you can see where the preparation part to free up production time, OEE improvement, is one of the key parts. So that's really why we've been asked to do this webinar. It is based on my book called Understanding, Measuring and Improving Overall Equipment Effectiveness, which was published about some 18 months ago, I think, in America, and is available worldwide on all major books distribution places or through CTPM. But Chapter 4 is very much about improving OEE and about conducting an OEE loss analysis. And some of the things I'll be talking about today are certainly covered in the book in much more detail. But to start with, overall equipment effectiveness model. The model we use and we found most effective is what they call the 7 loss model. Some of you may be familiar with what they call the 6 big losses of OEE, which was originally published by the Japanese in the first TPM textbooks. But later on, as time went on, people realized that those books were designed for companies that were running one-shift operations 5 days a week. When you start getting into 24-hour operations that run 5 to 7 days a week, you need to take into account the planned downtime as a loss, and that's actually written in the book TPM in Process Industries by the Japanese. So that's the model we find is most effective, especially if you want a model that gives you 100% correlation to good output. In other words, if OEE goes up 5%, good output from the line will go up 5%, or you'll be making it in 5% less time. So that's the reason we use this model. So first up, what affects the OEE losses? Well, there's a number of things that can affect OEE losses. Technical issues. And I've just used a loss where you'd find a technical issue impacting on it. For example, if the equipment is worn out, has design weaknesses in it, for example, has springs that fail and cause quality losses or whatever, technically you need to put a bigger, stronger spring in. So that would have an impact by causing unplanned recorded downtime when it fails. People development issues, reduced speed as an example of the loss. Sometimes operators who have not been properly trained, competency-based trained in how to operate the equipment, may run the equipment a bit slower than is ideal because they're not too sure about certain things. That's one example of a people development issue. Supplier issues, example being the raw material coming in has too much variability to it and it causes rejects or rework. And that could be the raw material, it could be the packaging material, for example. Planning issues. If we don't have a stable production plan and we have to swap and change, we may end up doing more setups than we should really ideally do. Or we might be doing setups that are not in the best sequence, where we're going. Some people have product wheels, and you start, for example, in the paint industry, you start off making white paint, yellow paint, and ultimately end up with black paint, and then you do a big clean out and start again. You progress through the colors. So if you swap and change, you end up having extra washouts or clean outs or whatever, and causing downtime. And then management issues. Do we run the line all shift, or do we stop for breaks? That's a management issue. But planned downtime is affected and it has an impact on OEE performance. And I've been in companies where they've had a process making a quite a complex sort of product, and every time you had to start up the line, there was quite a bit of yield loss as they got the thing correct. Now, by stopping at lunchtime and having a break in the morning and a break in the afternoon, etc., they had extra startups that cost them a lot in waste. And what they calculated out, when we pointed out to them in the analysis, was that they were losing about $340,000 worth of a year in lost product through this extra waste by having to start up. And it became obvious by putting a couple more people on, they could then run the line by people having intermittent breaks and no loss. So again, management decisions there. So the things to remember is, I'll just give you some examples, but all 7 losses can be affected by all these issues. So we just be mindful that there's a lot of things that do go into affecting OEE performance. Now, point 2, capturing OEE loss data analysis. Loss analysis data. We've identified there's really 3 ways of capturing OEE loss data analysis. There's what we call the high-level measurement, continuous recording, and sampling through observations. And we find the best approach is to do all 3 because they all have benefits, they all have limitations. For example, you have your high-level measure, which is the most accurate measure of OEE. How it doesn't highlight where the losses are coming from, but it does highlight how much loss you must identify. So by getting how much good output you made, for example, the shift, the available time, which is the time the people were at work, so that's the shift, the whole time, typically, and the ideal speed is the speed that the line should be able to run at if it's got the best raw materials, best feed, best operator, best ideal conditions, without redlining the machine, of course. So that information you can grab quite easily and you can calculate high-level OEE. And in some cases, people do it on an hourly basis or a continuous worm-type basis in some recording systems. Continuous recording. The accuracy of the data can be quite low, especially the reason for the loss. If there's a lot of losses are occurring, i.e. when OEE is below 60%. And even when you've got automatic recording systems or data collecting systems, the reason for the loss can often not be that accurate because people are too busy running around trying to get the line to work. What we've found is that when we're doing analysis and trying to capture data, if we go down and talk to the operators and spend, maybe just for a short period of time, and the need for trying to get more accurate data, you can actually probably try to simplify things and you can improve the quality of the data for a short period of time. But you still got to be mindful of there is this accuracy issue. And third is what we find is sampling through observation. Now, this is where when we put an improvement team together to go and look at analysing losses on a production line, for example, or production area, we have found it is invaluable to do a observation, and that is normally conducted where if you have, say, 7 or 8 people in your team, and those improvement team might have a couple of operators in them, so therefore you might have 5 or 6 people available. You do 1 hour observations each in a relay, and over that 4 or 5 hour period, you would be able to stand there and talk to the operators, but actually see exactly what's going on and pick up on really what is the reasons behind some of the issues. And the other thing is that's really helpful is that you'll be able to pick up on what we call unplanned interventions. And that's where the operators have to go and touch the equipment. Some people call it touch time. They're touching the equipment because maybe the packaging material is not feeding in correctly, so they've got to play with it to make it go. Maybe the product is not running squarely on the conveyor, so they've got to adjust it. Or bottle falls over as it runs along and they have to pick it up to keep it going. Those touch times are never recorded in any downtime sheets or automatic systems, but they are consuming the operator's time, causing frustration, and that time could be used for what we call proactive activities such as identifying defects on the equipment while it's running. So they're the 3 ways of measuring OEE. So in chapter 6 of my book, we talk about automating OEE, data capture, and things to watch out for and systems to pick. And there are a lot of good systems out there. And I was at a site the other day, and we'd actually recommended to them the site that RFS was one of the better systems around, and they are having a presentation by one of the reps from RFS, and I had the opportunity to sit in on it, and it was interesting to refresh the way the systems have really come along over the years, and they're becoming more and more sophisticated and user-friendly. However, it also reminded me of the role and the limitations of an OEE data capture system. So I thought I'd just ask the question of our audience today, who has an automated or a data capturing system? So whether it be a OFS, Ampler, and there's many other ones around, all quite. So I just thought I'd just ask the question, who actually goes and captures OEE data on an automatic basis, or downtime reporting automatically rather than having operators fill in a logbook? So if we can just have a very quick vote on it, you've got 3 options. Either yes, you do have a system, or no, you haven't got one, or maybe you're not sure whether they do have them at your site. Hopefully we will have so we have 55% have got one, 36 not sure, 36 no, and 9 unsure. So more than half have a data capturing system. Like I said, they're becoming more and more popular, and a lot of people are putting them in. So thank you for that. So what is the limitations of OEE data capture systems? And this is sort of reflection I had when I was watching this presentation from RFS. And this is not to say RFS is not a good product. It's an excellent product. But just the concept, because what they were talking about, and I've seen this with other systems as well, is that they said, right, we generate Pareto charts of losses. So we capture all the losses, and then we put them in a Pareto chart for you, and we can do a first level, second level, third level, and that allows you to go and pick the top 2 or 3 and work on those and significantly improve your performance, which is very valid and very true. And we call that deductive improvement using OEE data capture systems, or cross-functional teams to go out and do observations, etc., and talk to operators and get the data to identify the big losses and try to find the best solutions. And that's really working around the top 2 or 3 and saying, let's use a structured method, plan, do, check, act, which I think we're all familiar with, to get a good result. Now, like I said, we all do that, and it is a valid approach. However, what has been our learning from that? Well, what we've found this originally some 20 years ago, Procter & Gamble, and their experience, and then we saw it at Simplot, their experience. We've seen it at New Zealand Sugar, we've seen it at Sugar Australia, and I didn't want to make the list too long, but we've certainly seen it. And what happens is you take that approach, and every week you look at the top 3 or top 2, and you work on them for the week, and you knock them off, and you gradually get better and better. But what Procter & Gamble found and Simplot found is once you got to about the 70% mark, you had this plateauing effect. And the plateauing effect is where, yes, you go and grab the top 2 or 3 biggest issues for the week, you go and work on them, and you knock them down, but all of a sudden other issues pop up. And next week you've got different issues to work on. And the Pareto chart keeps popping up, so to speak, at that about magical 70% mark. So we then have to start thinking about, well, what was the answer? What did Procter & Gamble learn? Well, they learned they had to take a different approach. They didn't want to stop doing their deductive, always keep doing deductive, but they need to do a different approach. And this is what we call the inductive approach to improvement, using production area-based teams to focus on what we call prevention at source activity. Everything that is not right, such as equipment defects, recognizing the big losses will reduce and become easier to solve. In other words, you start tackling the Pareto chart from the bottom. Right? Now, how do you do that? Well, this is where TPM comes in with its autonomous maintenance, or what we call operator equipment management. And that involves going through a 7-step process, but the first 3 steps are about establishing basic equipment conditions by getting rid of all the defects and all the looseness. Step 1, step 2, getting rid of all the contamination on the equipment that can lead to accelerated deterioration. And thirdly, getting perfect lubrication. And if we don't get perfect lubrication, obviously that can lead to accelerated deterioration and cause problems with equipment performance. So that's an example of using an inductive approach, and by doing that you eliminate losses by fixing up bent grease lines before you have broken bearings and you have to have long downtime. So it does have an impact, quite a significant impact on OEE. It also has the impact, if you can see over here, that as you get rid of the tail, you start taking out the variability in the big issues and narrows them down so that they're easier to work on. So it has a dual effect. It gets rid of losses. It also makes this activity easier to do. So the learning has been you need to address losses from both ends of the Pareto chart, rather than what you find in most OEE data capture systems is that they just focus on getting you to work on the top ones. So what does that mean? Well, what Procter & Gamble found, and what we did at Simplot, and what we did at New Zealand Sugar, and what we did at Sugar Australia, and most of all our clients now, is that we introduced inductive improvement through operator equipment management, which is ongoing improvement. That means a couple of hours every week where you stop the line and you go out and you go searching for the defects and taking corrective action on the defects. And this is about developing your operators and your maintainers, and it's all orientated around production area-based teams of 4 to 8 people with designated frontline leader and aligned maintenance support. And what you find is, and what these companies have found, is their OEE then moved up to the best practice of 85 or above. What we've learned also from that, you'll notice in this chart, it took a few years for people to wake up to that, Procter & Gamble, and to realise that, you know, hey, we're not getting anywhere. What we do is when we're working clients with TPM, we get them to start introducing the inductive bit probably about after roughly 12 months, sometimes a bit earlier. But the idea is you use deductive to free up time, so then you can allocate 2 hours to doing this activity each week, and it doesn't affect the production plan. So that's and then you can actually get to world class within 5 years. So it does take at least 3 to 4 years to get this really working well. So that's been our learning on in relation to data capture systems and what we have to be mindful of in trying to improve OEE. So moving on to what affects the OEE losses. This slide we've used in our workshops as a little activity slide, and we won't be doing the activity today, but just to demonstrate the message we're trying to get out of this was to simplify it. We did, let's just worry about the last 5 of the 7 losses, unplanned downtime, minor stops, etc. And then we say, what are sort of activities we should be doing out there to improve performance of our equipment? And there's a list of these things that predict deterioration, establish repair methods, restore deterioration. And the point we ask people is, what happens if we don't do these activities? In other words, we don't detect deterioration, or we have poor repair methods. What does it cause? And what you find is that if we don't do any of those well, it will either cause unplanned recorded downtime or a minor stop. So all those will contribute to that. Now, the other interesting thing is that whenever you have unplanned downtime, in other words, a breakdown, the line stops unexpectedly, you've got to start it back up again after you fixed it. So that is going to have an impact on reduced speed because you've got to ramp it back up. Also, when the line stops unexpectedly, typically whatever you were making at the time will be a reject or require rework. And then when you start the line back up again, there's a good chance there could be some startup or yield loss. So all these losses are impacted by not doing those activities very well. And that's the message we're trying to get across. There's a lot of things you've got to do. It's not just one silver bullet. Then we talk about who should be involved. And the conclusion is that production need to be involved in all these activities, in either advising or doing them. Maintenance need to be involved with them either by doing them or assisting or advising, and technical support the same. So the conclusion we try to get everyone to realise is who's responsible for and accountable for OEE. It involves production, maintenance, engineering, quality, HR training, development of people, procurement, making sure the raw materials, inputs are right, planning and scheduling, all have an impact on OEE. And to make it clear then who's accountable, we make it very clear that production really need to lead the charge, right, in improving OEE. So that leads on to setting up a cross-functional team. Who should be in a cross-functional team to go and look at all the losses and start doing improvement? And what we find is that probably the best teams we see, or the best makeup of teams that we have developed over the years of doing a lot of these sort of cross-functional teams, is that one, we want about 7 or 8 members, so we want to get more people involved as possible, but we don't want too many, otherwise you end up with people like hiding in the corners. We want the production supervisor for the area to lead the team. So you normally pick a production line or production area where you can measure your good input and output, so you can measure OEE, and you want the production supervisor. Now, whether we put in their level 1 salary, so a supervisor, some people call them supervisors, some people call them team leaders, some people call them coordinators, some people call them superintendents. The thing is, it's normally your first level salary production person to lead a team. Then you've got your production area-based teams. They'd have a frontline leader and they'd have up to 7 operators. So we try to get the frontline leader and 1 operator. Now that's recognising we don't want to stop the line when you're doing a cross-functional team. So you want the place still running. So you want to be able to pull, if you can't pull 2 out, you just pull 1 out. Again, with maintenance, we want maintenance involved, we want mechanical, electrical, but some places don't have electrical available, or they're very few, or they're contractors, so you might only get 1 maintenance person. But you want the maintenance person who ultimately is going to be responsible for the improvement activities in that area of the that you're looking at. Then you want your technical support people. As we mentioned earlier, they all have impact on OEE. So it's probably having a couple of those would be really good from various areas. And finally, because management is a loss issue, and management need to learn about all this, is we want a manager in there. Not leading the team, we want the supervisor to do that so they get ownership to it. We want one of them, ideally the production manager, and if a lot of companies, and we strongly recommend when you're going to do this and start down this journey, it's good to have two teams running, two areas. So you don't want people on more than one team. So the production manager might be on one team, maintenance manager might be on another, or the technical manager might be on one, etc. So that's what we found is to be the most effective team. Now, in your doing improvement on losses, you need to have a structured process. So we use a 9-step process. We find that works really well. And you start off by having very clear boundaries for the team, what finance, how much time they can have, what their clear mandate or charter or purpose is, setting up. Then you form the team up so they've got rules, roles, data sheets to collect tasks allocated and history and learnings, and have a little discussion sheet so they can share with other people what's being talked about, having an agenda, all those sort of things to form up the team. Then you go into the analyse current situation. And that's what I want to talk about today, and that's really what that chapter 4 in my book is all about. How do we go about doing that? And what do we have to cover? So we cover all the issues, and that's probably been our, again, significant learning. So you want to analyse the current situation. So conducting an OEE, sorry, that should really be conducting analysis to support OEE losses. Sorry, a bit of a typo there. But yeah, conducting an analysis to support OEE improvement. We see that we try to get the improvement coordinator, we'll call it improvement coordinator, to do some tasks before you actually get the team, kick the team off, and then you have tasks that you want the team to do. We used to get the team to do the whole lot, but we just found it was, as we had realised we had to do more and more things, it became too daunting for the team, so we tend to do it, and often we, if called upon, we'll come and help the coordinator to do it. So first things, there's a list of 10 of these, so let's go through these very quickly. There is future analysis to make sure there's not going to be any change in the next 6 months that's going to impact on the team. Understand what's the range of products that you're actually going through the area, so that you make sure you're in the analysis of OEE analysis you're doing, it's covering all the range of products. Speed analysis, understanding what is the ideal speed for all the products you're running. What's all the material coming? What's the variability of the material coming in? Is it causing issues? So it's raw materials as well as inputs, gas, electricity, steam, air, whatever, packaging materials. Is there any variability that will cause issues that you need to be aware of? Then you do a high-level process flow map of what are we actually looking at? What are the boundaries, etc. And there's an example, quite a detailed one. This is a production line of a bakery. Right? So they mix up the dough, they play with it and put it in moulding, and then they prepare it, then they put it in the oven, and then they depan it, then they cool it, and out comes a loaf of bread. So the idea is to identify what all the different capabilities are of the equipment, where are the people located, where are the quality checks done, where do we count the product so we know what's going on. And then finally, if we're going to do detailed analysis, and I'll go through this in part 2, how do we break the thing up into sections so we can see, for example, where is the minor losses occurring? Where are the rejects coming from specific areas? So that's what we call a high-level process flow map. Then we want to know what other information is being collected in the area so we can look at how do we collect quality data, etc., etc. What is the structure and rosters? Are there alignment between maintenance and production, etc.? Because that has a big impact. Do the operators are competently based, skilled, or being properly skilled to operate the equipment perfectly, so they're not causing problems by not knowing how to operate properly. And how does our production planning, how stable is it? Do we use product cycles, etc.? And finally, let's get some measurements to say how we've been going for the last 6 weeks. So that's pre-stuff. Then the team gets into the good stuff, getting all the operators involved in all the shifts to find out what they think about the equipment and what ideas they have for improvement. Understanding what knowledge you use to support the operators. So do they have quality standards, standard operating procedures, etc., quality standards for input, output? Are they readily available? Are they up to date, etc.? Maintenance, do we have good knowledge for maintenance? Do we have good drawings? Do we have good history, etc.? And then you get into doing your OEE loss analysis, which I'll be talking about in part 2 of this, and then the final things we do. So all that is covered in a lot more detail in the book, obviously, and it's also, we have a team member manual I'll talk about in a second. Just to finish up, the OEE loss analysis spreadsheet, that's what we'll cover in part 2. It's a very powerful tool to assist in more fully understanding not only where all the equipment losses are originating from, but most importantly, the impact they will have when correctly addressed. The spreadsheet consists of 8 interlinked sheets and uses a bottling line example to demonstrate how it should be used. So again, part 2. So just to summarize what we're doing, what we've covered so far today, there are 5 key issues affecting OEE performance, and as such, a holistic approach is needed to fully understand all issues affecting the 7 losses. OEE is an improvement driver, not a performance measure for comparing. It's about looking at the line and how do we make the area of the line work better, not to compare lines. We need to remind ourselves of that one. There are 3 methods for OEE improvement, continuous OEE measurement, 3 methods for OEE measurement, continuous recording, high-level measurement, and sampling through observations. Most effective approach to use all 3 methods in concert. And finally, conducting an analysis to support OEE improvement is best done with a properly structured cross-functional team. So, how can we help? For our members, they can purchase that's our team member manual we use when we actually do a team that is focused on looking at improving OEE on a production line or production area. For those in New South Wales, if you want any help in doing any of this, there is funding still available in Smart and Skilled, which will cover a fair bit of the cost. And that funding is available currently up until 30 June next year, provided you complete the activity. So it's all about doing the improvement activities and linking it to a qualification to get the funding. 5 minutes over time, I apologise for that. But hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into OEE and the need for a holistic approach, and to understand what's required to improve it to best practice. And I look forward to catching up with you all next month, and we will take you through how we have developed this spreadsheet as an incredible, powerful tool to help you do all that. And with that, any questions? Be more than happy to answer them, or if you're tight for time, happy to take anything offline, or you can ring me or send me an email.
Okay.
And again, thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you very much, Ross. So as Ross said, if you have any questions, please press the raise your hand button or type your questions in the control panel box provided, and we'll give you a bit of time so Ross can respond to that. And in the meantime, just wanted to remind you that a link to the recording of today's webinar will be provided in a follow-up email to you later today. So please feel free to watch the webinar again or share it with your colleagues. And at the moment, it doesn't seem like we have any questions. Just got a little bit longer. Okay, it doesn't seem like any questions are coming through, Ross. So, and since we're a bit over time, we'll finish up today. So, once again, if you have any further questions, feel free to contact us at any time. And on behalf of everyone at CTPM, thank you very much for attending, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.